June 4, 1944. 3:00 a.m. south of England. Rain lashes the steel decks of the Allied planning ships, and the wind bites through the thick wool of parka and greatcoat. You can almost feel the freezing gusts tugging at the soldiers' coats, the smell of salt and diesel hanging heavy in the air. The English Channel churns violently below, waves smashing against the hulls as if daring them to cross. In a dimly lit operations room in Southwick House, Supreme Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower stares at the map sprawled across the table. His eyes flick from one sector to another. Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Sword. Each beachhead a potential bloodbath. His jaw is tight. He knows time is slipping away. Every hour the storm rages, the invasion is delayed, and Hitler's Atlantic Wall strengthens. But something else gnaws at him: the weather. All week, the skies have been a roiling chaos of wind and rain. Bombers can't fly, paratroopers can't jump, landing craft risk capsizing before they even hit the sand. His meteorologists have been almost useless so far, data delayed, reports conflicting. And yet, one man, a quiet figure in the corner, is about to change everything. Group Captain James Stagg, the chief meteorologist for the Allied Expeditionary Force, shuffles papers in his hand. His face is drawn, lined from years staring at barometers and pressure charts. "Sir, I think I've found a window," he says, his voice low but urgent. Eisenhower leans in. You can almost hear the pounding of his own heartbeat over the storm outside. A window? How big? How long? Stagg's finger traces a pattern across the chart. June 6th, not more than 6 hours. Calm, relatively clear skies. The channel will be navigable, waves manageable. Any later, the next break isn't for 2 weeks. By then, German patrols will have reinforced every mile of coast. Silence fills the room. Every man around the table realizes what this means. 6 hours. That's all they get. 6 hours to launch the largest amphibious invasion in human history. 6 hours to cross 50 miles of churning water, face mines, artillery, and entrenched German soldiers, and plant the seed of liberation in Normandy. And yet outside, the storm rages on, mocking them. For a moment, Eisenhower lets himself imagine the horror. What if Stagg is wrong? What if the storm shifts at the last moment? Hundreds of landing craft filled with troops could capsize. Paratroopers could be scattered across the French countryside. Ships could be blown back into England before they even touch the beaches. A gamble on the weather, a gamble that could decide the war. Then Eisenhower does something few realize. He nods, not hesitantly, not slowly, but with the weight of every life in the room pressing on him. "We'll go," he says, a single word that seals the fate of tens of thousands. But the storm outside isn't finished with them. Dark clouds twist over the channel, and somewhere across the coast of Normandy, German sentries are snuggled in their bunkers, confident that no fleet will dare cross these waters. They have no idea that the Allies have already begun their quiet, desperate preparations. Ticks, 6 hours, one chance, and the world is about to watch a gamble that no one could imagine would succeed. June 5, 1944. 11:00 p.m. The storm hasn't relented. On the decks of the invasion fleet, you can hear the chains clanking, ropes whipping in the wind, and men shouting to be heard over the roar of the waves. Landing craft are loaded, guns polished, rations secured, yet every sailor, every soldier feels the same gnawing doubt. Will the storm let them cross? Below deck, the paratroopers of the 82nd and 101st Airborne Division sit in tense silence, helmets clutched to chests, rifles ready, eyes darting to the hatch doors. The smell of sweat, wet wool, and fear mixes with the cold, salty air that seeps through the metal bulkhead. You can almost feel their hearts hammering, every man imagining the sand, the bullets, the chaos waiting on the other side of the channel. Meanwhile, Eisenhower walks the length of the command deck, coat flapping in the wind, binoculars in hand. His staff huddles behind him, eyes scanning the waves for any sign of reprieve. All week he has resisted the urge to commit fully. Delays have been endless, reports conflicting, morale fraying. Tonight, though, there's no turning back. Stagg's forecast is clear: 6 hours, maybe less, and the window closes. And then in the quietest, most improbable moment, the wind drops slightly. Rain eases. The waves, though still treacherous, are no longer impossible. Stagg's calculations were right. A window has opened. Eisenhower makes his way to a chart, hands steady despite the storm outside. He plots the departure times of every landing craft, every ship, every plane, knowing that if one element falters, the entire invasion could unravel. Every minute counts, every second is a decision of life and death. Across the channel, German commanders sleep soundly, or at least they think they do. General Erwin Rommel, recently returned from Berlin, has dismissed the storm as a natural barrier. The Atlantic Wall is fortified, yes, but the seas are untraversable. Mines are set, artillery primed. And yet, Eisenhower's gamble is about to fly right under their noses. At 11:30 p.m., the first wave of landing craft begins to move, engines whining over the water, lights dim to avoid detection. You can almost hear the tension in the hum of the motors, the quiet prayers of men clutching rifles and helmets, the shuffling of boots on metal decks. Every captain, every sergeant knows that there is no second chance. One mistake, one wave, and death comes quickly. And high above the fleet, paratroopers prepare to jump into darkness. Their planes, silhouettes against the stormy sky, will soon carry them miles behind enemy lines. Drop zones are mapped with painstaking precision, yet the wind, fickle and unpredictable, could scatter them across Normandy, leaving them isolated, vulnerable, hunted. Eisenhower, standing on the deck, watches the fleet inch forward. He knows history will judge this moment not just by bravery, but by luck, by timing, by the delicate thread of Stagg's forecast. A wrong decision tonight would have been catastrophic, but for now, the window exists. The gamble is on. And somewhere in a quiet room in Normandy, German sentries stir, hearing nothing. They have no idea that the largest amphibious assault in history is already underway, crossing waters they assumed were impassable. June 5, 1944. Midnight. The English Channel is a dark, rolling expanse of shadow and foam. You can almost hear the waves whispering secrets to the moonless sky. Every landing craft, from the smallest Higgins boat to the massive LSDs, drifts silently toward France, engines muffled, crews tense, every man aware that the slightest misstep could mean the end. Above the fleet, the first C-47 transports carrying paratroopers slice through the clouds. The 101st Airborne grips rifles and straps, waiting for the signal. The hum of the engines, the rush of air through the fuselage, even the occasional groan of metal under strain, it all blends into a heartbeat of anticipation. Somewhere behind them, planes carry gliders filled with men, jeeps, even artillery pieces, bound for fields that will soon become battlefields. Back in the operations room, Eisenhower paces, unlit cigarette clutched between his fingers. Every report from the fleet, every message from the squadrons comes in fragments, sometimes hours late, sometimes garbled. His gut twists with tension, but he forces himself to focus. One false move could unravel everything. Yet in this rare calm between storms, he dares to hope. In France, the German defenses sleep, or appear to. Rommel had returned home, certain the seas made invasion impossible. Coastal patrols had been scaled back. Mines and fortifications waited, silent and deadly, yet untouched by the reality of men moving under cover of darkness. You can almost feel the irony. The Wehrmacht, so confident in their unbreachable barrier, has no clue that tens of thousands of troops are already crossing the very waters they deemed impossible. Then around 1:30 a.m., Stagg's forecast proves its worth in real time. The storm's remnants begin to shift eastward, clouds breaking just enough to let reconnaissance planes spot German positions and guide naval gunfire. Winds stabilize. Waves, though still formidable, become manageable. The 6-hour window is here. Eisenhower knows that once the first wave lands, everything hinges on timing, coordination, and sheer resolve. On the decks below, soldiers whisper prayers, jokes, last words to loved ones they may never see again. You can feel the tension in the cold air, an almost electric current running through the men as they wait for dawn. Engineers check landing craft engines. Radio operators scan for enemy signals. Officers move silently, giving orders, double-checking charts, recalculating timings. Every single action matters. And then Eisenhower does the unimaginable. He signs the order that will go down in history. Operation Overlord commence. A single stroke of a pen, a wordless command that sets in motion the largest amphibious invasion ever attempted. In that moment, hope, fear, and courage all collide. One miscalculation, one sudden storm, and history could have been rewritten in blood and defeat. As the fleet presses onward, the horizon still dark, the channel waiting like a hungry beast, the question hangs in the air. Will this gamble, this 6-hour window of almost impossible weather, be enough to break the Atlantic Wall and free Western Europe? June 6, 1944. 2:30 a.m. The first faint light of dawn hasn't yet reached the horizon, but thousands of landing craft are already slicing through the black waters of the channel. You can almost feel the chill of the early morning spray stinging exposed faces, the roar of the engines, the creak of overloaded boats carrying men, tanks, artillery, and hope across 50 miles of open sea. In the Higgins boats, soldiers clutch rifles and helmets, their knuckles white, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. They whisper last-minute prayers, exchange tense jokes, or simply stare straight ahead, hearts pounding. The air is thick with salt, fear, and adrenaline. Somewhere in the bowels of the fleet, a crewman checks his compass again and again, knowing that a slight drift could land his men directly under German fire, or worse, in deep waters too rough to navigate. Above them, Allied bombers fly in formation, their engines muffled by low clouds, ready to strike key positions inland. Paratroopers of the 82nd Airborne jump into darkness behind enemy lines, drifting silently in their chutes toward villages that will soon erupt into chaos. Every man feels the weight of what they're about to face. Every bullet, every mine, every entrenched German soldier is waiting for them. Back in England, Eisenhower watches the first reports trickle in from the fleet. Waves, though rough, are manageable. Early reconnaissance shows minimal German activity. The Atlantic Wall defenses had been scaled back because Rommel had trusted the storm would halt the invasion. Eisenhower's gamble is working, but he doesn't relax. Not yet. Every moment could bring disaster. And then something unexpected happens. Amid the roar of engines and crashing waves, a flash of lightning illuminates the French coast. You can see, for a split second, the fortified bunkers and obstacles along the beaches, the daunting Atlantic Wall that had terrified planners for months. Soldiers whisper under their breath. Fear spikes. But Eisenhower knows something his men on the water can't. The tide of history is moving, and the Germans are unprepared. The fleet presses forward, waves pounding the sides of the craft, men bracing for impact, gripping rifles as the coast draws near. You can almost feel the collective heartbeat of tens of thousands of soldiers, synchronized with the motion of the channel, all waiting for the moment they step into history, or into hell. And in the quiet moments between waves, Stagg's voice echoes in Eisenhower's mind. 6 hours. 6 hours of calm before the storm returns. One window, one chance, one gamble that could change everything. June 6, 1944. 5:30 a.m. The first wave hits Omaha Beach. You can almost hear the collision of metal against sand, the groan of landing craft under fire, and the staccato bark of German MG-42s tearing through the morning air. Men leap into waist-deep water, boots sinking into churned sand, rifles held tight, faces etched with fear and determination. The Atlantic Wall rises before them, concrete bunkers, steel obstacles, and barbed wire twisting across the shoreline like a trap designed by the devil himself. Mortar shells erupt around them, spraying sand and smoke. Men shout orders, prayers, and curses at the same time, voices swallowed by the roar of the sea and gunfire. Every step forward feels impossible, yet they move. Inch by inch, wave by wave, they advance. Above, Allied bombers streak across the sky, attempting to suppress German defenses, while paratroopers fight to secure bridges and crossroads behind enemy lines. In those fields, the night's silence is replaced with chaos. Scattered soldiers, overturned gliders, and the cries of men thrown into combat before the sun even rises. The gamble of weather, the careful timing, the window Stagg predicted, it has brought them here, yet every second feels like survival hangs by a thread. Back on the command ships, Eisenhower watches reports come in from all 5 beachheads. Utah is secured more quickly than expected. Gold, Juneau, Sword, they struggle but the troops hold. And Omaha is a nightmare. Radio reports crackle with desperation, yet the soldiers push forward. You can almost feel Eisenhower's tension, a knot of pride and fear tightening in his chest. One wrong wave, one misstep in timing, and the dream of liberation could drown in the channel. Meanwhile, German commanders scramble. Rommel is away and coastal patrols are thin, caught unprepared by the sudden audacious crossing. Communication lines are jammed. Officers shout into field phones that won't work, only to find the Allies already entrenched on the beaches. Their confidence in the storm's power, the barrier they believed would protect them, has evaporated. Disbelief spreads through the ranks, an invasion here now against all expectations. On the beaches, men keep moving. You can feel the rhythm of courage and terror, a heartbeat shared across the channel, through every boat, every paratrooper, every soldier clawing forward through sand and blood. The gamble, the window, the weather, they all converge in this violent, fleeting moment. History teeters on the edge of 6 hours, and the world will never forget it. And somewhere deep in Eisenhower's mind, a single thought lingers. What if the storm had not cleared? What if Stagg's window had never appeared? He shakes it away. There is no time for doubt, only the landing, only the fight, only the chance that this one gamble could change the fate of the world. June 6, 1944. 8:00 a.m. The sun begins to rise, faint and pale, barely cutting through the mist over Normandy. You can almost feel the chill lingering in the sand, the damp uniforms clinging to exhausted soldiers, the smoke and dust mixing with the brine of the channel. The beaches, once empty and silent, are now a chaotic mosaic of courage and carnage. Troops push inland, overcoming barbed wire and mined obstacles, while medics rush between fallen men, dragging them to makeshift triage zones. Tanks grind over obstacles, crushing wooden stakes and steel hedgehogs, firing into the horizon where German bunkers still spew fire. The Allies are advancing, slowly, painfully, but advancing nonetheless. Every inch gained feels monumental. High above, paratroopers regroup. Scattered in the darkness hours before, many had landed miles from their intended drop zones. Yet they improvise, seizing villages, securing crossroads, sabotaging artillery positions. You can almost hear their whispers. We were dropped behind enemy lines, but we survive and we fight. Their improvisation is as vital as the invasion fleet, threading chaos into order. Eisenhower, back on the command ship, receives reports. Utah is secure. Gold and Juneau have made breakthroughs. Sword is contested but holding. And Omaha is bloody, yet the tide is turning. The gamble, the 6-hour window predicted by Stagg, is paying off. The storm, once a weapon of nature poised to crush the invasion, has become an ally masking movements, scattering enemy focus, and giving the Allies the element of surprise. In Germany, disbelief turns to frantic action. Rommel, away at home, is called back in a flurry of urgent messages. Field commanders shout into radios, attempting to coordinate a defense they never anticipated. Soldiers on the coast are ordered to counterattack, yet confusion reigns. They are too late, too few, and too scattered. The Atlantic Wall, for all its formidable construction, cannot hold against an enemy who crossed it with audacity, timing, and luck, aligned perfectly with a meteorologist's prediction. On the beaches, men look back toward the sea. Thousands more troops are still landing, every craft filled with men determined to push forward. The storm clouds break further, revealing the full scope of the invasion. You can almost see the realization in the eyes of soldiers and commanders alike. They are part of something monumental. A gamble that could have failed spectacularly has succeeded beyond imagination. And as the tide finally begins to turn in favor of the Allies, a thought lingers like a shadow. 6 hours was all they had. A tiny window, a sliver of opportunity, and history had tilted. One wrong decision, one missed forecast, one hesitation, and this day could have been remembered as disaster instead of D-Day. June 6, 1944. Noon. The sun now shines weakly through a patchy sky over Normandy, revealing the grim reality of the morning. You can almost feel the heat mixing with the cold spray of the channel, the sand churned to mud under thousands of marching boots, and the acrid smell of gunpowder that clings to the air. The beaches are a scene of triumph and terror intertwined. Soldiers push further inland, faces streaked with sweat and blood. Some shout with exhilaration, others cry out in pain. Mortars continue to explode, machine guns chatter relentlessly, and artillery booms from distant positions. Every step forward has been bought at a cost. Bodies litter the sand, and medics work furiously, triaging the wounded under fire. Victory is alive, but so is the shadow of loss. Eisenhower watches the reports with grim focus. Thousands have landed, key positions are taken, yet he knows the battle is far from over. Each beachhead gained is a foothold into the heart of Nazi-occupied France, but the cost of this gamble, the 6-hour window that Stagg predicted, has been paid in human lives. For every success, there is a man who will never see the next sunrise. Above, paratroopers regroup, rallying their scattered comrades. They capture bridges, road junctions, and artillery positions, turning initial chaos into strategic advantage. Their bravery and improvisation echo across the fields, demonstrating how much depended not only on timing but on sheer courage and adaptability. In Germany, commanders scramble in disbelief. Rommel, returning from his brief home leave, arrives to find an invasion already in motion, unimpeded by the storm they believed would protect them. Panic spreads, orders are delayed, and the carefully constructed Atlantic Wall begins to crumble under relentless pressure. Their confidence shattered, they realized too late that nature itself had betrayed them, or perhaps that the Allies had outsmarted them at every turn. On the beaches, soldiers glance back at the channel, waves still crashing but now filled with the endless procession of reinforcements. Landing craft continue to arrive, guided by brave crews who had risked everything in the darkness. The gamble that began with a single weather forecast is unfolding in real time. And yet, even in the triumph, Eisenhower cannot forget the precariousness of it all. 6 hours. That's all they had. 6 hours in which the tide, the wind, and the clouds aligned perfectly with human courage. One mistake, one miscalculation, and the day and perhaps the war could have ended in disaster. The invasion has begun, but the cost of victory, the fragility of fortune, and the heroism demanded by history are only just becoming clear. June 6, 1944. Evening. The sun sets over Normandy, casting long shadows across the battered beaches. You can almost hear the creak of landing craft returning to England, the distant boom of artillery fatting, and the exhausted groans of soldiers who have fought, crawled, and survived a day that will be remembered forever. The channel, once a wall, is now a bridge, carrying the weight of a new chapter in history. Eisenhower stands quietly on the deck of his flagship, surveying the scale of the invasion. Reports continue to flow in, beachheads secured, paratroopers linking up with advancing infantry, German counterattacks blunted. The gamble, the 6-hour window predicted by Group Captain James Stagg, has succeeded beyond imagination. A risk that could have ended in catastrophe has become the decisive moment of liberation. Yet Eisenhower's mind lingers on the cost. Thousands of men did not survive the crossing or the landing. The beaches are strewn with the evidence of bravery and sacrifice. You can almost feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, the knowledge that every life lost was part of a calculated risk, every heroism forged in a moment of chance and timing. Across Normandy, soldiers set up defensive positions, consolidating the beachheads and preparing for the inevitable German counteroffensive. Engineers begin clearing obstacles and mines, medics continue their grueling work, and commanders coordinate reinforcements and supplies. The operation, though a success, is far from complete. Every hour matters, and the window Stagg predicted may have closed, but the war is only just entering a new phase. In Germany, disbelief has turned to frantic reaction. Rommel returns to the front to witness the unprecedented scale of the invasion. Communications are fragmented, coordination is near impossible, and German soldiers realize that the Allies have achieved the impossible, crossing a storm-tossed channel that had been assumed impassable and landing forces behind their Atlantic wall. The sheer audacity of the operation leaves them stunned. And high above, the memory of that early morning still lingers. 6 hours of clear skies, calm waves, and a gamble that could have gone wrong at any moment. A single meteorologist's prediction, Eisenhower's nerve, and the courage of tens of thousands of soldiers had aligned perfectly to turn chance into history. The world had changed, but the war was not over, and the storm, the gamble, and the human spirit that carried it across the Channel would continue to shape the fight for Europe in ways no one could have imagined. June 7, 1944. Dawn breaks over the Normandy countryside. You can almost see the weary soldiers trudging inland, faces smeared with mud and soot, rifles clutched like lifelines, and hear the distant echo of artillery still firing. The beaches, once the edge of despair, have become footholds of hope. History has been made, not by numbers alone, but by timing, courage, and a window in the storm. Eisenhower walks among his staff in the aftermath rooms, maps covered with pins, reports scattered across tables. He does not smile. Victory feels hollow when weighed against the price paid. Yet he knows that every man who survived, every inch of territory gained, owes its existence to a gamble that could have failed spectacularly. One miscalculation in weather, 1 hour's delay, and Operation Overlord might have ended in catastrophe. Across the Channel, soldiers write letters home when they can, telling fragmented stories of bravery, fear, and perseverance. Engineers, medics, and pilots recount near-impossible feats, boats guided through waves that would have capsized lesser crews, paratroopers rallying scattered units behind enemy lines, bombers hitting targets with surgical precision despite cloud cover. Every act threads into the larger tapestry of that day, a testament to human endurance aligned with fortune. Back in Germany, Rommel returns to the front lines, surveying the breach in the Atlantic Wall. Officers are in disbelief. The storm that was meant to protect them became the Allies' ally. Communication failures and misjudged assumptions haunt them. It is a moment of reckoning. The combination of human ingenuity, audacity, and Stagg's forecast has rewritten the rules of the battlefield. Eisenhower's decision, supported by one man's meteorological genius, becomes a lesson in risk, leadership, and timing. Historians will later call it audacious. Soldiers call it miraculous. You can almost feel the ripple of that 6-hour window through time, the invisible thread that changed the fate of Europe. And even as the fighting continues inland, one thought remains. History often hinges on the smallest details, the quietest voices, the invisible windows. A storm, a forecast, a commander's courage, and the world changes. June 7, 1944. Night falls over Normandy, and the Channel, once a raging barrier, lies calmer, reflecting the first stars like a mirror. You can almost feel the exhaustion in the air. Soldiers slumping against each other, medics still running, officers poring over maps, and Eisenhower himself, finally allowing a moment to breathe. The gamble has succeeded. The invasion fleet has landed tens of thousands of men, the paratroopers have secured key positions, and the German forces are reeling. In the quiet, you can almost hear Eisenhower's reflection. 6 hours. One narrow window of weather, predicted by a man who read the skis like a book and acted upon with nerve that would define leadership for generations. Without it, the entire operation might have collapsed into chaos. But with it, a new chapter of the war began, one that would eventually see the liberation of Europe. Across the beaches, soldiers tend to their wounded, dig in for the coming fights, and look toward the inland roads with determination. They survive the impossible, crossing a storm-lashed channel, facing entrenched defenses and advancing despite chaos and fear. Each man embodies the culmination of planning, courage, and timing. The human cost was immense, but so was the achievement. In Germany, disbelief lingers. Rommel and his commanders realized that nature, enemy audacity, and human foresight converged against them in ways they could not have predicted. The Atlantic Wall, so long seen as impenetrable, has been breached. The world watches history being rewritten, not by inevitability, but by risk, by decision, and by chance. Eisenhower knows the truth that will never be fully captured in reports or history books. Millions of lives hung in the balance for just 6 hours. A window that might have closed in failure, yet opened in triumph. He looks out at the channel, now calm under the moonlight, and knows that this gamble, this sliver of time, changed everything. The tide of war has turned, and it all began with a forecast, a decision, and the courage to act when the world seemed impossible.